Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stephen King Cast, one man's musings on the works of Stephen King. Each week, I will review one entry in the bibliography of Stephen King in the chronological order of publication, and this week, I will be reviewing the conclusion of HBO's The Outsider. Please note that this episode originally came out in March of 2020 and was attached to the review of the ending of The Stand, but in order to keep things as streamlined and seamless as possible, I have clipped out this particular review portion of the conclusion of The Outsider, this final episode of The Outsider, and I'm keeping it in its own separate episode. So, though the episode itself is focused on the events of HBO's The Outsider, then there may be some reference to whatever is occurring in 2020 of that time, just so you are aware. All right, everyone, without further ado, please enjoy my thoughts on the conclusion of Stephen King's The Outsider. Okay, guys, what I'm going to do now is read some listener email. So up first we have Jeff, who writes, "Dear Constant Reader, I have been meaning to write to you literally for years. I discovered your podcast in 2016 when I began my own Stephen King reread and have listened to episodes as I finish books and or adaptations. I first discovered King at a junior high school book fair where I purchased It and Night Shift. I became a fan immediately and went back and read all of his previous books. Subsequently, I purchased and read all of his books upon release through Desperation and The Regulators. After graduating from college, I drifted away from Mr. King, reading only a handful of his books between 1997 and 2016. My impetus for rereading his novels in chronological order was a conversation with my brother who said that King doesn't know how to end his books, citing specifically The Stand as having a terrible ending and It as having a gross ending. Your recent redefinition of the podcast fits well within why I started my reread. The reason I'm finally writing is to ask a question that has been bothering me for years. Maybe I've missed it because I skipped around your podcast episodes, but why didn't you review The Colorado Kid or Blaze? I assumed it was because you hated those novels, but just today I listened to your 2010 Decade in Review podcast, and you commented that you had never read The Colorado Kid. If that's the case, how did you decide to not review it? In my opinion, it's a complicated novel to review, perhaps because it's a piece with From a Buick 8 in being a story about stories with no clear resolution. It's actually one of two King novels that I have read more than twice. I've read The Stand, probably my favorite King novel, 5 times and listened to the audiobook. I hated The Colorado Kid so much I read it again about 10 years ago on a plane to see if I had missed something. Reading it again in 2018, I actually enjoyed it. I went in with a better understanding of where King was as a writer at that time, and I feel like I really got where he was coming from. Blaze I have less interest in. It's fairly generic, particularly as it comes to King. At any rate, I'm curious why you skipped those 2 novels. So Jeff, the reason why I skipped those novels is because at that point in the publication of those books, if I was during the original part of the podcast when I was going through each of the books chronologically speaking, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and I had not read The Colorado King or Blaze, and I didn't want to shut down my flow because I was really in a zone at that point. I didn't want to shut down my flow to read and dissect 2 new books to me, whereas I was familiar with everything else that was coming up, so the reread would not slow me down. I had a kid on the way, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't want to interrupt the flow that I was in, and it was a really, really good flow. I needed to get to the end of the podcast mission, and I don't think that I would have been able to if I had stopped to analyze 2 new books. So that's the reason for that. I'm going to get to it at some point, but that's the answer to your question. Jeff continues, I'm presently rereading 11/22/63, so still several novels away from catching up to you and King's overall output. This won't stop me from giving you a top 10 list of King's novels that I have read or reread. And his top 10 list is It, The Stand, The Shining, Under the Dome, Duma Key, The Wastelands, The Green Mile, The Drawing of the Three, Bag of Bones, and The Talisman. I strongly suspect that 11/22/63 and Revival will be strong contenders for my top 10. Thank you for a fantastic podcast, Jeff. Jeff, thank you for writing in. Thank you for, asking me about Revival, Colorado Kid and Blaze. I don't know if I clearly had explained why I hadn't touched those, but that's why. So as you continue your reread, make sure that you continue to send along your thoughts. And then I have Paul, who writes, "Hello, I have recently discovered your podcast and I love it. You and Stephen King make my day enjoyable. I apologize for not discovering the cast earlier, but I'm just getting into podcasts and this is my favorite." Well, thank you. I find great delight in the background noises of your dogs snoring, barking, and lapping water. Keep up the great work. You have fans who are constant listeners. I do have one question for you. Sadly, I do admit to being new to the podcast, so I'm years behind in commentary and analysis. My question is, did you like the Dark Tower movie, and what is your take? Paul continues, "I did in fact like the movie. I loved Idris Elba's portrayal as the gunslinger, as well as Matthew McConaughey playing Walter the Man in Black. Your thoughts?" Thank you so much for your time, Paul. Paul, as I record this, it just came out that Idris Elba has the coronavirus. So get well, gunslinger. Paul, unfortunately, I did not like the Dark Tower movie. If you're listening to this now, you might want to go back to the summer of 2017 and find that particular episode. I go in deeply as to what I did not like about that movie. Unfortunately, it was just not. It was not for me. And then we have Dan, who writes, "Hi, great podcast. I'm a constant reader since I first picked up Carrie in 1979 at the age of 14. I've listened to a lot of your episodes and love them all so far. They're very insightful, and I find your take on the books interesting and thought-provoking. My only gripe is that I can't seem to find an app that..." and then he continues, "unfortunately, there's an issue with... the Podbean service, I think, syncing up with some apps. So I'm gonna, if you are having problems downloading the apps, let me know so I can let Podbean, the hosting site, know, and hopefully that they can fix it. Okay, then I have 2 emails regarding Cujo, and I'm actually going to wait on those emails until I get to the Cujo episode. And I'll read them then. So, guys, if you have any thoughts at all around the ending of The Stand, any endings that we have talked about so far, just the endings of Stephen King in general, please write in at stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. Okay. One thing I did not do that I think that I probably should do is discuss the ending of The Outsider, because that was actually one of the reasons why I decided to start this particular journey with the Stephen King cast. Was there was a lot of conversation around The Outsider, the HBO miniseries based on the novel by Stephen King. There was a lot of conversation around whether or not the ending of The Outsider would be good, because, quote unquote, Stephen King doesn't know how to end his books. And at that point, I that's why I wanted to start this part of the podcast, because I don't entirely agree with that. Okay, so with that said, the Outsider episode 10 has come, and it dropped last week. I wanted to talk about it, but I've been kind of busy. But I figured that I would talk about it now. So I had covered episodes 1, 2, and 3, I think, of The Outsider, and then I just let it be. I just wanted to enjoy it. I didn't want to dissect it. But needless to say, if you listen to my review of episodes 1, 2, and I think 3, I was very much in love with The Outsider. And generally speaking, 9 out of 10 ain't bad. Let me get into the ending of The Outsider, but let me do it through the criteria that I have established to measure the endings here. So, does it provide an appropriate conclusion to its characters that are consistent with the characters' actions, conflicts, or themes from the books? It's a mixed bag. I think the answer is definitely a mixed bag. The characters being consistent with the characters' actions, conflicts, and themes from the book, on some levels, yes. In some cases, no. Clearly, all of our characters they end up very similarly to the characters in the book. So I should say right now, spoiler alert for The Outsider. But Jack gets bitten by the rattlesnake. He kills himself.
Running a business is hard enough, so why make it harder with a dozen different apps that don't talk to each other? One for sales, another for inventory, a separate one for accounting. Before you know it, you are drowning in software instead of growing your business. This is where Odoo comes in. Odoo is the only business software you'll ever need. It's an all-in-one, fully integrated platform that handles everything. CRM, accounting, inventory, e-commerce, HR, and more. No more app overload. No more juggling logins. Just one seamless system that makes work easier. And the best part, Odoo replaces multiple expensive platforms for a fraction of the cost. It's built to grow with your business, whether you are just starting out or already scaling up. Plus, it's easy to use, customizable, and designed to streamline every process, so you can focus on what really matters, running your business. Thousands of businesses have made the switch, so why not you? Try Odoo for free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
Holly and Ralph face off against El Cuco. Holly leaves. It's kind of open-ended. Some characters live, some characters die. Glory has a resolution. The DA, she and the DA have a moment together. So to a certain extent, yes, there is consistency within the characters' actions, conflicts, or themes from the book. From a character standpoint, I would say yes with an asterisk, that I don't know that in terms of time distribution, the fact that the show had spent so much time in the first 9 episodes really spending time with these characters in moments that we typically don't see in television, we didn't get to experience that level of that distribution of time with them after the show had, in the wake of the events of this particular episode. It kind of felt rushed. There was a level of just kind of plowing through this in the aftermath of El Cuco. So I would say, yeah, I would say that it is an appropriate conclusion, but not to the best of what it had been or what it could be. The next question is, does it successfully wrap up the plot? Specifically, do the events build upon one another with consistency? Yes, it picks up where it last left off in episode 9 with the shootout. The first section of the conclusion of this 10-part miniseries is the shootout outside of the cave. Then the characters head into the cave. They have their showdown with the outsider, the El Cuco, and then it's the resolution and the falling action from that, where they sort of clean it up. The problem is that there is a lack of clarity to what's occurring from a plot perspective. When they are, I'm not entirely sure if they're trying to pin it entirely on Jack. They say that Jack is an accomplice to someone. I don't know if they've been able to identify that particular someone. Did they say that they were able to stop the person that was in the cave? Did they are they telling the authorities that there was a confrontation with who they believed the perpetrator was within the cave? I was unclear about that. It is very unclear why Holly says, "Who's Terry?" That is a big swing and a miss that caused so much confusion during a scene that is supposed to be very clear, and a scene that everything has been leading to this moment of confrontation, and then to throw a line like that just causes confusion. It takes the viewer out, and it raises doubt about the ability to land a particular ending. It was a very unnecessary line. I'm still confused by it. I have heard that it is intended to imply that the cover-up is beginning, but still that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So there was that. There was Ralph seeing the dead children in the cave. Again, it was very confusing. I didn't really know who it was. I assumed that one of them was his son, but I didn't know who the other one at first was. It turns out that the other one is the brother of Frankie Peterson. I don't know why it's the brother of Frankie Peterson and not Frankie Peterson or any other victim for that matter. I guess because Ralph was the one that shot him. Yeah, sure, whatever. But in that moment, it's jarring, it's confusing. We knew that 2 kids went missing within that cave, so to have 2 kids in the cave at that time dressed in modern attire, it clashes with your understanding of what the show had established that thus far. It's unnecessarily confusing during a scene that does not need to be confusing. If anything, it should be clear. The show was very clear with what the rules are in terms of what the supernatural aspects of this particular character are, in terms of this character scratches you, the character takes your DNA and then can shapeshift into you and frame you for a murder. The character can also bend the will of vulnerable people that are weak enough on a spiritual level to do thy bidding. But ultimately, the El Cuco is not strong, is weak. Now we're throwing in ghosts, and we're not quite sure why the ghosts are there or who even the ghosts are. We're not entirely sure if the ghosts are metaphysical, if it's metaphorical, if they're literal ghosts. It was Ralph really seeing those dead children there, or was that his conscience? There are too many questions here, and I think that in that moment we are led to believe that no, he actually saw spirits, not his conscience, which I bristle at with that particular character. And then, of course, there is the stinger at the end where Holly has the scratch, and we're led to believe that the El Cuco will continue somehow. But even that, her having the scratch, it flies in the face of what the show had gone to great staking pains to do to establish what the rules are. Okay, so she has a scratch. It doesn't mean anything because the scratch means that El Cuco takes your DNA to then shapeshift into Holly, but the character is dead, therefore that scratch does not matter. Like, the scratch doesn't turn you into a shapeshifter, it doesn't turn you into El Cuco. They might change the rules at the very end to continue season 2, because there are 2 moments within the end of season 2 where they allowed 2 different back doors to a sequel. One is Ralph saying to Holly, and I think the line is verbatim, I'm looking forward to working with you in season 2. I think he said that to Holly, meaning that if anything kind of unknowable or supernaturally occurs, he would not be opposed to hooking up with her to take it down, to be the Scully to her Mulder. And similarly, at the end, there's the other back door to potential season 2 with the scratch. So they're leaving it is as open as possible, depending on how they want to pivot to a second season, when personally I think they should just leave it alone. But in terms of the plot, at the end, they muddied it. They muddied the waters. So I don't know if I can say that the events build upon one another with consistency. Does the conclusion serve the theme, the symbolisms, and the motifs? Yeah, I mean, it ends in the graveyard. Frankie, the ghost of Frankie Peterson has been able to lay to rest. Terry Maitland is honored by having his name cleared. So all of that is good. So I would say, yeah, it serves the themes, the symbolisms, the motif. Justice has been done. Ralph has gone through his journey. His character arc is complete. Again, it kind of dipped more into seeing literal ghosts than him wrestling with the ghost of his son, which I have a problem with, but he is now a believer. It was a show about a man's journey to becoming a believer. He has become a believer. He is now open to a world that is much larger than he had known it to be. I would say that, yes, it does conclude. It does serve the theme, the symbolisms, and the motifs. Are there other factors that we need to consider? Yeah, so like I said, it gets confusing at the end for reasons that it doesn't have to be. And honestly, everything was barreling not towards the shootout, but towards the confrontation with the outsider, El Cuco. And I realized that one question that maybe I should be asking during the analysis of endings is, does it exceed the premise of the concept, or does it live up to the author's intentions? Is the author able to fulfill his or her intentions? And in this case, I don't believe that the confrontation in the cave lives up to the expectations of what that confrontation should be, and it doesn't subvert expectations. So I don't believe that it specifically and purposely swerves to undercut the expectations that you thought. I think as they made their way through the caves, I thought it was building very nicely. We get to see that, she kind of has a "if it bleeds, we can kill it" line, where we see that he needs to hold the handrail. It's great. It's establishing that this thing is beatable. It is weak. We hear the sort of Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain, when you hear how powerful he sounds from the cave, and he tells him to come in. And but ultimately, that confrontation felt lacking to me. I think that there could have been more of a conversation around purpose, around existence, around what it is, what makes us human, what separates this thing. I feel like it did not live up to the expectations that it had set forth for itself. And so with all of this said and done, I felt that it was rushed. I felt like the confrontation between El Cuco and our characters did not live up to what it could be. I felt that it was sloppily handled in the end, with it trying to leave itself open for season 2. So all in all, and then there's a particular look with the shootout that was employed with quick cuts and a style of grit. I don't know the terminology. But for me personally, visually, aesthetically, it kind of always rubs me the wrong way. I don't like that particular look. With that said, I think that objectively speaking, the shootout was done nicely. Subjectively speaking, I did not like the look of the shootout. I just want to say that. And if anyone knows what I'm talking about here, I know Ridley Scott in the early 2000s used this particular look in a lot of his movies. I just can't get behind it. Okay, so do I like the ending? No, I did not like the ending to The Outsider. I did not like this episode. Is it a good ending? It's a meh ending, I think. So some people seem to like it, some people don't. But I think that quality-wise, it dipped. I think that episodes 1 through 9 established a level of quality, and this is below the quality that the first 9 episodes had established. So personally, I did not like the ending, and I don't think that it's a good ending. Unfortunately, for all of the reasons that I listed before, I think that it really made things confusing in the conclusion when it should have been the most clear. And I don't think that was a purposeful decision on their part. But with that said, going back to endings, I don't think that endings are everything. I'm not judging The Outsider because of this particular hour. There's still good to be had in this particular hour of television. The shootout was done very well. Ralph and Jeannie at their son's grave is beautiful. Glory being able to have her moment of at least moral victory, which is tinged with tragedy, it's really, really well done. So there are great beats here. There's even in something that isn't as good as the previous 9 episodes, it's still good. There's still a level of quality here, and it doesn't take away from my strong recommendation of The Outsider as a gripping piece of television and one of the best Stephen King adaptations that have ever existed. So I'm really fortunate, I'm very grateful for The Outsider because it really catapulted me to do this examination of Stephen King endings. And so I felt that I would be dropping the ball if I did not cover the ending of The Outsider. Okay, guys, if you have any thoughts on The Outsider, write into stephenkingcast@yahoo.com. And you can follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Blue Sky. And if you have any time on your hands, head on over to Apple Music and leave a review. That would greatly help me out. Okay, everyone, may you have long days and pleasant nights, and I will see you here next time where MOON spells Stephen King Cast.